Hello, brothers and sisters. This is another midweek meditation. This is the first day of December, the second week of Advent, and I'm trying to pull together my thoughts this week as I share with you the theme of the second week of Advent, which is peace. In particular, as I think about peace, I think about how we seem to have a lack of it in the world nowadays. These past couple of years have been tough, and I think we've seen a lot of injustice within the world and a lot of injustice in our communities, probably a lot closer to home than we would have liked. I think that's difficult for us here in Vermont. I know in particular, I grew up here in this state being told that we live in a community of friendly neighbors. You know, we're sort of the Spider-Man of the 50 states. You know, we are the friendly neighborhood Vermonters. But especially over the past 4 years, with the political and social and national divisions that we've been seeing, I've really seen even folks here in Lamoille confronting that understanding of a friendly neighborhood state, as I've seen injustice among among neighbors, as I've seen hate and vitriol. I in particular think about the folks who were protesting for Black Lives at the roundabout, and how folks would drive around the roundabout and roll coal in their faces. What is it that brings folks, especially folks here in our local community, to treat one another in that way? It's not peaceful. And I think that sort of behavior causes us, as citizens of this community, as members of the community, of our local community and citizens of this nation, to really question whether or not peace is something realistic within the world. But for thousands of years, people have been confronting injustice to try to create places of peace. And I think that the challenge for us as Christians, especially during the second week of Advent, is to really reflect on the gifts of peace that we have to give. I do not believe that peace within the world is something that exists right now, but I do believe that we create within our lives pockets of peace that we are able to share with one another. And in those moments when we have peace in our lives, I think that we need to reflect upon them. We need to honor them, and we need to recognize that those spaces, those places where we can be at peace with folks who are different than us, folks who are different but still are committed to loving and respecting one another, that is a gift that we really do hope, at least within the Christian faith community that I am a part of, that is a gift that we really do hope to share with the entirety of the world. And I think that it is something that Christians for centuries have struggled to create, so that more and more people can experience what it is like to be loved without reservation, to be accepted for who you are, to know that you have a place among a community that cherishes you. That, I feel, is the foundation of a gift of peace. But I do also feel that those gifts of peace are going to look different coming from each and every one of us, because each and every one of us have a different understanding of what peace looks like. I think of, in particular, Paul, when I think about trying to create places of peace. This week we're going to be reading from Philippians. And Philippians is an interesting epistle. It's an interesting letter that Paul writes to the congregation in Philippi. It's different letters that are pieced together. And we can say with some certainty that this is Paul writing, and at one point in time, it's Paul writing from prison. And he's writing to his congregation in Philippi, and he shares with them his love for them and his confidence that even though he's in prison and doesn't really know what's going to happen to him, he believes that they will be able to share with one another and create a place of peace. He sums it up like this: I am confident of this, that the one who began a good work among you will bring it to completion by the day of Jesus Christ. It is right for me to think this way about all of you, because you hold me in your hearts, for all of you share in God's grace with me, both in my imprisonment and in the defense and confirmation of the gospel. For God is my witness, how I long for all of you with the compassion of Christ Jesus. And this is my prayer, that your love may overflow more and more with knowledge and full insight, to help you to determine what is best, so that the day of Christ you may be, so that by the day of Christ you may be pure and blameless, having produced the harvest of righteousness that comes through Jesus Christ for the glory and praise of God. And for me, that's a really beautiful thing to be writing from prison. This heartfelt belief that this congregation will be able to seek out the love of God and to bring it into the world and to share it with one another. I think that is the template that we as Christians try to follow as we share peace in the world. We believe that peace is rooted in love. And we believe that when we are able to bring a community of people together, trying to let the love of God guide us, to make decisions about how we interact with one another, about how we interact with the world around us, that creates a space of peace that should be shared. And so, as we go into the future, as we continue to face the divisions within our communities and in the world, I think we need to be asking ourselves, what is it that's guiding us? I think there's a lot of anger within the world right now, and there's a lot of anger in our communities here in Lamoille. But what are we allowing those emotions to lead us towards? Are they leading us towards a place where we can come together as different people, accept one another, love each other, talk with one another, and hash out our differences? Or is it leading us to a place of hatred, where we seek to harm each other, where we are behaving in ways that we look back on and perhaps feel ashamed? When I think about Paul writing from prison, I think of another person who wrote from prison. In 1963, Dr. King was writing from the Birmingham jail. And he was writing to clergy colleagues who were angry at him for coming in with his civil rights movement and riling things up in their community. And his response to them was pretty simple. I am here because injustice is here. I am here to cast aside injustice with love, with a nonviolent protest movement that seeks to shed light on the injustices that we throw at one another. I think that is a powerful statement, and it's also powerful for me as I think about peace within the world and how we often struggle for it. That Dr. King, as he was sitting in prison, was thinking about Paul, and how often, in order to create places of peace, we have to confront injustice. There's plenty of injustice for us to confront within the world. But I think right now, at this moment, during this season, it is time for us to reflect upon the pockets of peace that we have to give. Perhaps some of us still have a little bit of work that we have to do in order to create those pockets of peace, in which case that is a part of this week as well. It is about working for peace and sharing it. And if we don't have peace to share in our lives right now, then we can continue that effort. We can ask for help. We can recognize that there are communities out there that believe that peace is real. And that even though we struggle as a human species to share that peace with everybody, peace is the truth of God. At least that is the call of Christ that we people of faith should be trying to follow. That the call of God is a peace that is rooted in love, in a peace that is rooted towards a respect towards our shared humanity. It is a peace that is not supposed to be gated. It's not supposed to be confined. It is not supposed to be segregated or bought or sold. It is something that is supposed to be open to all of us, no matter who we are or where we are in life's journey. And I think that that is the challenge of Christ during this holiday season. To, as Paul puts it, let that love or the compassion of Jesus Christ. Here's the way he puts it: that your love may overflow more and more with knowledge and full insight. To let that love that we have for God, that love that God compels us to share with one another, overflow more and more and more and influence our insight on the world. I think that when people who are letting love guide them come together, people are able to see that peace is real. And it becomes very apparent what a world without peace looks like as well. We, for a long time here in Vermont, have said that our state is a place of peace. And I think over the past couple of years, we've seen the real injustice that exists below the surface within our communities as our communities have become more diverse. We bring in refugees from outside of the state, as people from outside the state move into the state. As we've gone from a state with a 1% minority population to a 5% minority population, we've seen that what works for the majority of us here in Vermont for a long time doesn't work for everybody. And so I think we really need to ask ourselves, if we want to be a friendly neighborhood state that can share peace with all people, what are the things that we can be doing to expand God's peace within the world? Because it's not enough. It's not enough if we have peace just for ourselves. We need that peace to overflow, to influence our insight, to influence our knowledge, and to be available to all folks, no matter where they are in the world. And so I hope that you have gifts of peace that you can share with one another this holiday season. If not, then I invite you all to join us in church, because we're trying to create those spaces of peace. I don't know what they're going to look like, because each and every one of us envisions it differently. But I do know that when you allow love to influence your actions, peace becomes real. And I know that the communities that I've been ministering to have plenty of peace that we can share this holiday season. So, as I often like to close off my correspondence, peace be with you. Amen.